All right, so yesterday we wrapped up activity 215. You read your third article on cell phone use while driving. We learned about the distraction, the brain activity behind that, and you developed some embedded quotes regarding that article. So how is reading a third article about cell phone use while driving? How is developing 2 more embedded quotes preparing you to write your argumentative essay? Go ahead and answer that next to 215. Take about 30 more seconds to answer that. Okay, when you're ready, flip your bookmarks to the back side. We're in a catalog, How 215 helps you practice concepts that your essay will be graded on. So 215 covered the first 4 concepts. 100% I covered it. We looked at persuasive appeals, we looked at a claim and a counterclaim, and we worked with some specific evidence to prove our argument. Okay, but there's 2 additional items that you need to copy. They showed up this morning. In terms of an intro and a conclusion, we're not specifically having an activity that focuses in on that. But you folks have worked on preparing an introduction before. You've worked on preparing a conclusion before. So instead of us writing down activity 2 point blah, well, all of that prep work for your first EA in this unit, that first essay you wrote, that was prepping you to make your conclusion and make your intro. Once you've got that stuff copied, you can fold up the bookmark, open up your Springboard to 149. If you've got a highlighter, take it out. You'll definitely use it today. There's 2 learning targets on page 149, but the first one is the valuable one. The second one you're not really working with. So the idea behind 216 is for you to create an annotated bibliography. I abbreviate it to ANBIB. It means the same thing. It just allows me to speak it quicker. So the idea of conducting research we're skipping over. We've talked about it briefly. It's not really something that you're doing so much in this particular unit because Springboard's feeding you the info that you need. But what we are going to focus in on is that second heading. It says citing sources and creating a bibliography. Now, one thing that I want you to highlight is this little statement here. Whenever you're using information, facts, words that are not your own, you always need to cite them. You need to give credit to the author. And there's 2 ways that you can do that. Writing something called a works cited page, which every single one of you has done, or working with something called the annotated bibliography, or ANBIB. I know you folks did the works cited in 7th grade 100%. Something else popped up for you to highlight, make sure that you do. A works cited page is a list of articles, of texts, of internet sources that you used for your research. Now, an annotated bib takes that a step further. So it takes what you've cited. Hopefully you've looked at the screen and went, ooh, you guys have to watch the screen. There's a lot of notes happening. Annotated bib takes the work cited. It adds one more component to it. So, yeah, you list the citation, who was the author of the piece, when was it published, what's the title of it. But you also provide a type of summary. So what exactly was the point of you reading this piece? What did you gather from it? Okay? So that's what we're going to focus in on today is how do you make an ANBIB? How do you develop one of these? Okay? Do not close your Springboard. Let Andy push it in front of you so it's not in your way. And I want you to focus on the form that you should have grabbed from the top of the collection cart. This little annotated bib form, or ANBIB, It has two different sides to it. Both sides I've screenshotted for you, and it's up there. So the first side is this image. The second side, that image. If you haven't put your name on this handout, please do so. This handout, it's actually broken down into three components that you have to fill in. This upper spot, it's a place for notes, but the actual writing component, there's three key items that you fill in. They're called research cards. The first one is on the front. The second one is on the top of the back page. The third one is on the bottom of the back page. So these are three separate cards that you're filling in. Okay? Now before you leave today, 2 out of those 3 are going to be complete. They will be. So when you leave, you'll only have one that you really have to do at your own pace. Okay? All right. Again, if you didn't put your name on this form, get it on there. First thing I'm going to have you write down aside from your name is when the piece is due. It's due next Tuesday with your final draft of your essay. I do not want you turning it in early. I want it to be attached to your final draft. So don't lose this, because if you lose it, you have to start over from scratch, and that's a pain. It's not hard, but these take time. So we're going to highlight some info, so I'll make sure that you highlight what you see pop on the screen. First thing is this heading, Works Cited Formulas. Now, back in 7th grade, you had your teachers kind of walk you through, hey, we're going to cite our first piece that you used in your research essay. This is how we cite it. Now, there's some things that I'm sure your 7th grade teacher mentioned that I'm going to reiterate it to you. Specifics in citation are insanely important. Making a mistake in your punctuation, forgetting a mark, spacing incorrectly, it makes your citation invalid. Let's say you forgot a period, you get no points for it. You get nothing. So you have to make sure that you are very specific in what you are writing down, that you follow the formula. Now, lucky for you, here's 2 more items I want you to highlight. You're only working with 2 formulas. That's it. That makes it super duper easy. You're working with online article and the newspaper print article. I don't want you to memorize these formulas. That's a waste of your short-term memory. I don't want you worrying about it. It's on this page. Follow it phrase by phrase. Simple. Okay? Now, there's one other item that a lot of kids mess up on, and it's the idea of indenting. So you're going to see it flash on the screen. I'm going to do it multiple times. Yes, you're going to make these marks. You have to indent after you complete your first line of text, and if you move to a second line, or a third, or a fourth, or a fifth. Some citations are super long, and they look like they're almost a paragraph in length. You have to make sure that you indent any following line that appears after the first, all right, when you show it to you without that highlighting being there. All right, so at this online article citation, you see how that first line is all the way to the left? And then the second and the third are indented? That's what you have to do. And I'm going to make sure that you folks do that when you get your first citation written on this page. Bar none, 9 out of 10 kids forget to do it when they copy it down. Hopefully you guys will prove me wrong. Okay? So again, very important that you follow the formula, that your spacing's right. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. Your springboard, I'm going to have you refer to page 146. It says it on the screen in blue. This is the article that we read yesterday. I'm going to walk you through the first annotated bit. You'll copy anything that's in red, and yes, there's a lot to copy. Okay, this is going to be one almost entirely complete piece that I'm giving you. I want you to go ahead and write down what type of formula we're using for this article. So the piece we read yesterday, how the brain reacts, it was a newspaper article. So we have to follow that formula. And you folks have that formula near the top of your page. I just did a really quick picture shot of it as a reminder, hey, this is the article formula that I was using. Okay, now I'm going to provide you the source citation. You have to remember to follow the punctuation precisely. Know where a period is at. Know where a capitalized letter is at. If there's a quotation mark, does it come after a period or before? If you have sloppy handwriting, Now is the time to go slow and make it count. Because again, one mistake, you get no points for the citation, and that can hurt. So here's the article, How the Brain Reacts. Here's the citation. Now, before you write, please remember, if you pass this first line in your writing, you've got to indent any second line or third or fourth. Go ahead and start copying it. Now that article did have two authors, and I wrote their names just like you see up there. They're alphabetized, so Michael Just was my first author, alphabetically, and Tim Keller. I had the last name, comma, the first. And after I wrote both their names, there's a period. Next was the title of the article, How the Brain Reacts. I have to put quotation marks around the article title. But you got to notice where this period popped up. The period popped up at the end of the word reacts and before the quotation marks. After the title, I have to give the title of the newspaper. Well, it was the New York Times. If you were typing this out, you would need to italicize or slant the lettering. Because for handwriting it, I don't expect that. You don't need to worry about that. I have a comma after the title of the newspaper, followed by the year that the article was published, 2009. Put a period. It asks what type of format the text was. Well, it was a print piece. It wasn't electronic, it was printed. Okay, a secondary mistake that kids make, aside from indenting, which I really hope you did, I hope you didn't forget that, they write the date our United States way instead of the funky MLA way. And you have to write it in this weird format. You have to. It's the date followed by the month, followed by the year. That was the date that we read this piece together. Okay, now this isn't going anywhere. It's staying up there. It's not going to disappear. So while it's up there, you might want to double check, okay, did I put the periods in the right spot? Did I make sure that I wrote the date the way that it appears up there? The month January, it wasn't abbreviated. It was written in full, so you have to make sure that you do that. So again, it's not going anywhere, but I'm going to move on to the next step of the annotated bib. So I've got to summarize. I have my citation. The summarization is really you just answering two questions. So the first one says, how does the source help support your argument? What's the argument of our essay that we're writing? Okay, the idea of texting while driving is dangerous. Cell phones are a distraction when driving. So I have to answer based on this idea. This is a sentence frame that's incomplete. Copy it, but complete the sentence. Justin Keller's article supports the argument that cell phones are a distraction to drivers by, you have to complete the sentence. Don't leave it hanging. Make sure that you finish the sentence up. So if you need to refer back to the article because you want to use a specific fact, if you want to refer, maybe even quote some information, you could do that as well. Again, make sure you complete the sentence. Just adding those 3 dots doesn't mean your sentence is done. Okay, now the second question requires a longer response. It says, what makes the source credible? Credible means accurate, truthful, reliable. It's not falsified. So this one, you're going to see 3 sentences pop up. Copy the whole thing down. And while you're copying it, I'm just going to be talking it through. Okay? Now, the reason why we know the source is credible is based entirely on the author's credentials. They're both researchers in the field of brain study. And they both have looked at studies of drivers and their way of being affected by a cell phone. Just as a professor of psychology and a director of brain studies, additionally, Keller is a senior psychologist at a center of study. So both of these men are men of science. They have degrees. They've been doing this for decades. They're not just random reporters. They're giving us their findings, their studies. Now, the reason why we know, I didn't look it up on the internet. It was indicated in the author information prior to the actual article. So if you look at page 146, right below the title, there's this light blue box. You should have written down the term ethos in there from yesterday. That gives all the background information of these two authors. And 100%, this is a credible source. Now, not all of our articles are written by scientists and psychologists and driving professionals. The other two we've looked at are just reports. But what makes them credible is the information that's presented. They discuss and they quote researchers. They look at specific statistics and present those to us. So even though those people aren't necessarily scientific, they are looking for information and presenting it to us in that scientific way. I'm going to keep this up for about a minute. If you don't get it all written down, don't freak out. It's printed in the weekly binder, so you can always grab it, bring it to your desk if you need it. If you feel that this is going too quick, you can always do that. You know, what I've done is I've given you an almost entirely complete annotated bibliography for one source. But if we flip it to the back, there's two more. Now, the information that I found for the citation is two places. One was actually looking at page 146, seeing what was there, but Springboard's nice, and they give you another area to find this information at. So if you turn your Springboard to the very last page, it's page 367, you're going to see a piece that looks exactly like the image on the screen. It's titled Credits. And if you follow where the arrow is pointing on the screen to where it's pointing in your Springboard text, you're going to see 3 of the 4 articles titles there. You'll see the article title. You'll see a year when it was published. You'll see where it was published. That information's been presented, and you can use that for your citations. Now, not everything is going to be there, so you might have to do a little flip-flopping, okay? Now, our next step is for us to get you prepped to complete the citation on your own without my help. So, I'm going to have you work with research card 3. We're going to skip one. So for those of you that are like, what does that mean? We filled in this first one. When you flip your page over, skip the box at top and go to the box at the bottom. That's where you're going to work with this next citation. What you've got to do is you've got to cite either the article titled Parents Share Son Fatal Text Message, or you cite the science behind distracted driving, whichever one. Okay, now the page number for both articles is on the screen. I am going to give you a couple of hints and clues for you to fill in the citation and how to attack the 2 questions. Okay, now the first clue that I'm going to give you is the citation. You want to utilize the online article formula. This is the one we did not do together. This is the opposite one. The format of text, when it says, what's your format of text, you would write print. Just the word print. Okay, for the first question, you need to give me at least 1 sentence for a response. For the second question, you need to give me at least 3. Okay, last little shebang for you folks. You want to make sure that you're mindful of your punctuation. The authors. Both of those articles do not have a human being cited as an author. One of the authors would be CBS News. The other one would be KUTV. You have to look at the articles and figure out which one belongs to which. Last, the day that we read the information was the 17th of December. Make sure that you're putting the date in the right order. Okay, now I don't mind if you're working with someone. You can have the exact same source citation, which you should, but your answers to those two questions have to be entirely different. You cannot copy from one another, or you and your partner will lose credit. Okay, I'm going to give you, say, about 6 minutes to attack this one citation without me. Thanks, go ahead.